Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast. The podcast where we talk about what it means to be an alpha male in today's society, the right way, with God at the center where he belongs. For we are made in his image, strong, dominant, and in control. We don't apologize for that. Now, if you're a regular listener, this is not the first time we've talked about this subject. For these subjects, there'll be more than one today. This wasn't the episode I was going to record, but it's one I think society and a lot of men need, even if I have talked about it before. If Noah can preach about the flood coming for 100 years, certainly we can talk about this again. So let us gather together as a tribe of alpha males to talk about watching and being ready, preparing for what's coming. While you're listening, your one-stop shop, if you like the message and you want more, goodshepherdtraining.com. goodshepherdtraining.com. If you want to skip the bio, you can skip to around 3 minutes and 45 seconds from now. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, he got me through some nasty places in this world, war zones, and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents he's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. Like I alluded to in the beginning, if Noah could preach for 100 years about the catastrophe coming, surely we can talk about it again here in the tribe. Unlike Noah, I don't know exactly what's coming, but I do know that Jesus says many times, watch and be ready. Watch and be ready. He who has no sword, let him sell his cloak and buy one. And this theme of watching and being ready, spoken of many times by Jesus himself. So let us talk about it again. If you've lived through the past 2 years, wherever you are, I don't think I need to convince anyone that lifestyles, even in America, can change drastically. The world today is much different than it was 2 years ago. It's a good reminder that things can change quickly, drastically. Now, I don't have TV. I don't watch any of the major news sources or anything like that. But even I know things are heating up overseas in the Ukraine and Russia. And I don't know what will happen. And you don't know what will happen. That's kind of the point. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, don't be afraid. These things must come to pass. You don't know what's going to happen. Russia and America have a lot of nukes, as do a bunch of NATO countries. And I don't think that's likely, but it's certainly possible. What is probably likely, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what is probably likely is supply chain interruptions. Inflation's not even likely. Inflation's just a reality. Do you see that getting better anytime in the next few months? So, hopefully, it's enough that Jesus tells us to watch and be ready. Hopefully, it's enough that you know that Daniel the prophet and Jesus and the book of Revelation all tell that there will be trials and tribulations. Hopefully that right there is enough, because if you don't listen to God, I don't expect you to listen to me. If it's not enough seeing the craziness of this world and the change in lifestyle that we've gone through in the last 2 years, and with everything going on right now, thinking that things may or may not change drastically in the future. Hopefully you think and know that it's your responsibility as an alpha male to be able to protect those weaker than you. Deuteronomy 22:25. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. Right there, a biblical precedent that it's your responsibility as a man to protect those who cry out for help, to those who need protecting, to be able to protect and provide for yourself and those around you, to love your neighbor as yourself. None of those reasons are enough. Stay tuned until the end, and I'll tell you why. Even if you don't care about any of those things, you should still do the things laid out here in this podcast today. So even if you don't think all those things are important, stay tuned till the end, and I'll show you why it's still beneficial. Little cliffhanger there for you. So what are some attainable ways that you as an alpha male can step up, watch and be ready, be able to provide and protect? The first one is going to be probably the most attainable of the physical things we talk about today. Water. You know that water is a number one killer in most natural disasters. Not like floods washing people away, like people drinking dirty water. All around the world, that's a big killer. Don't think that that can't happen in the United States. Not having access to clean water is a big deal if you need it. Here's the good news. It's almost free to have clean water. Any kind of soda container, anything that's meant to hold acidic, pressurized, carbonated stuff is a good container. Rinse it out, put clean water in it. As long as it doesn't get contaminated, it will last a long, long time. I know that the bottled water you buy in the store has an expiration date. That's because some government entity mandated that every food or beverage item sold had to have an expiration date. But unless contaminants get in that water, almost nothing is going to go wrong with that water. I say again, get a good sturdy container. Not a milk jug, obviously, not a flimsy plastic container like that, but like a big, thick 2-liter bottle meant to hold soda. Rinse it out cleanly and put water in it. If it's tap water, which I don't generally like to drink anyway, it has some amount of chlorine and germ-killing stuff in it that you're drinking anyway. I say again, take those containers. If you don't drink that stuff, good, but probably somebody at your work or somebody somewhere does. Gather up those containers, fill up the water, and put it somewhere you don't have to think about it. It's great that for pretty much everybody listening to this, you can turn on the tap and get clean running water. But what if you can't? What would you give? What would you pay for a gallon of clean, drinkable water if you hadn't had any for 3 days? So do it now when it's cheap and easy. You may want to, in addition to that, store some iodine. Iodine is cheap. Look up how to purify water with iodine. Not only is it easy and cheap, but in small doses, it's good for you. Also, bleach. Again, you have to be careful and use the exact right amount. But having some of those things stored so you can make clean water. And for everything I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to tell you to practice a skill. Practice knowing how to purify water, whether it's with water purification tablets, whether it's with whatever kind of water filter you want, whether it's going out and making a water filter, activated charcoal and sand, making, clean, drinkable water. Again, a pretty low barrier to entry, especially right now when the stuff is very attainable. If there is some kind of supply chain disruption or big disaster, are you counting on, FEMA to show up with clean water? Because historically, that's not been the best thing to count on. Can you, as an alpha male, provide clean, drinkable water? Next one of the biggest ones. This pandemic was a reminder that there are real pandemics throughout history that kill lots of people. Viruses and bacteria. Sanitation. The thing we probably don't like to think about or talk about is not the cool thing. It's not the AR-15 and a bandolier of ammo. But if you look at warfare and war conflicts, disease kills as many or more people than gunfire does. Sanitation. Again, bleach is pretty cheap. Things like antibiotics, things like Neosporin antibiotic ointment. You can get right now, I got some at Walmart yesterday for less than $1 because my pup has a big knock on his head. It reminded me that I probably should get some more in addition to what we have. Like 88 cents a tube. What would that be worth if you had an infection on your leg? If you had a cut on your leg that was fresh and open and you couldn't get to a hospital and you could just put some antibiotic ointment on it before it got infected. What would that 88 cents triple antibiotic ointment be worth? Sanitation. And for skills for this, learn how to dig a trench like you do in the military if you've never been in the military. Learn how to dig a trench, like a long trench you can squat over and go to the bathroom in it and cover it and walk a few feet next time and go to the bathroom and cover it up. It's great that you can just go to a toilet and flush it, but again, what if you can't? Maybe knowing how to do that. Deuteronomy 23. Also, you shall have a place outside the camp where you may go out, and you shall have an implement among your equipment. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your refuse. Again, biblical precedent. Again, have the skills. Know how to clean a wound. Know how to do that so you're not relying on the internet to look it up and figure out how to do it. What if there is none? Even just knowing the signs of an infection, the early signs of an infection. Now the next one, food. Again, I want easily attainable stuff for you guys if you're not already on board. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a bunch of stuff you're never going to eat. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a forklift pallet full of MREs and put it in your garage. If you want to do that, fine, but there's a much easier and more practical way to do this, a lower barrier of entry for you if you want to take charge and be able to feed yourself and your family or those around you that are weaker than you, no matter what happens with supply chains, with any number of things. And that's just to whatever you normally buy at the store. If it will store, buy another one. Or wait till it goes on sale and buy two. If you eat ravioli in a can, if you know that's something you eat that your kids eat, Denti more beef stew, if that's something you like to eat anyway, next time you go to the store, instead of buying one, buy two. Next time, buy two more and then eat the oldest ones first. If you eat spaghetti, next time you go and buy one of those little 99-cent sleeves of spaghetti, buy two of them. An easy way to have some extra food, and just every time you go to the store, if it's something that'll store, buy another one. Now, one of my main staples, doesn't store too well, eggs. My general dinner every night is 10 eggs for dinner. They don't store very well, but I do have a big thing of powdered eggs. Much longer shelf life. And if there is some kind of supply chain disruption, my wife and I can sit down and we can have the same dinner we pretty much have almost every night. But have some way to feed yourself and others, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I would say the skill for this, have some way to get food if you can't get it from the store. It's great if you can just go to the store and get food. Again, what if you can't? Have some way to get food, whether that's being able to grow some food, whether that's knowing how to hunt or trap or fish or something. Even so, I wouldn't rely 100% on that. But having an additional way to get food other than store, money, credit card. But practice a skill, any number of those skills. Even if you don't ever need it, any of those hobbies and pastimes are probably far healthier and far better than sitting in front of the TV watching Netflix and then driving to the store and buying food. Being out in a garden, being out in a forest, being out in the desert and gathering your own food. There's something I believe in innately alpha male about that. Being able to put food on the table no matter what. On that, another cheap thing, store vitamins. If something does happen, you have to get handed out rations and stand in a soup line. Even if you live in the smallest of places and have a very small income, multivitamins right now are cheap. If things get bad and all you're getting is potato soup and white bread, that sucks, but it's going to suck a lot less if you have a multivitamin, some kind of vitamin. Again, they don't take up a lot of space, they're not expensive right now. This next one, fuel. With things heating up overseas and all kinds of other things, who knows what's going to happen? It's not unlikely that fuel is going to be harder to get. The easiest thing I can say for this is, don't let your car get below half a tank. What if your car is on empty and that's the day when you can't just get gas at the gas pump? I would say as a general matter of just being ready all the time, having an extra gas can in your car with some gas in it, some Stay-Bil. Something like that's a good idea, but the most practical way is just keep your car above half a tank. And you don't know if that's the day you're going to have to take a long trip to a hospital and the gas pumps aren't open. Or any number of things, just even if things don't get bad, it's just a good practice to do. I would also say a backup way to heat your house. We are still in winter. And I don't know when you listen to this podcast, but think about if whatever mode of heat you normally relied on, like the electricity, if it didn't work, would you have a way, apart from the grid, to heat your house, at least for a little bit, till you figured things out? Alright, the next one, man. You knew it was coming. You knew we were going to talk about it. The stuff men like to think about and talk about and spend money on. Defense. Guns. Kit. Again, let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. I would say at a minimum, a handgun and a long gun. I really hope that I'm preaching to the choir here. I really hope that you haven't waited until now to get guns and ammo. But if you have, wake up. Guns and ammo are not as good as they once were, but they're a lot better now than they have been for a while. If you don't have a good, reliable handgun, I don't care if it's a Smith & Wesson 686 .357 Magnum revolver. I don't care if it's a Glock 17, a Smith & Wesson M&P. Any of those would be a great choice. A good, reliable 1911. But I would say at a minimum, have a handgun and have a long gun. We've done whole episodes on guns. There's a whole other podcast, Gunfighter Life. But for this episode today, a good, reliable handgun. A way to access it quickly. Because handguns aren't the best defensive tool, they're certainly not the best for hunting or anything like that. They're only useful because you can have it with you pretty much all the time. But having it with you is only good if you can access it when you need it. So have that handgun, have a way to access it quickly, reliably and repeatably, whatever kind of holster you want. If you don't know where to start, I'd say start with a strong side outside the waistband holster. Practice with it. But like I said, I don't care if you get a Smith & Wesson 686 or a Glock 17, a Glock 19, a Smith & Wesson M&P, or any number of guns. We kind of live in the golden age. Pick a good, reliable handgun, a way to access it quickly. Practice with it. Train with it. Make sure that it works and dry fire. Practice accessing that gun quickly and getting hits on target. And then don't just leave it at home in a safe. Actually carry it because you don't know when trouble comes. If you did, hopefully you would just avoid it. And then I'll say have a way to feed it. And ammo is nowhere near as cheap as it was a couple years ago, but it's far easier to get now than it was a couple of months ago. It may very likely go down a few dollars a case per 1,000 rounds in the next couple of months. It very well also may double in price or go away and be almost impossible to get again. And weighing those two options now would be a good time if you've been waiting to restock on ammo. If you can afford it, if you have a little bit of disposable income, it'd be a good time to get some ammo. And don't just get it and hoard it and get a couple of 1,000 rounds and throw it in a basement. Practice with it. Have the magazines that you have for that gun loaded, but practice with that ammo. Train with it so you're good if the time comes and you need it. I said minimum handgun and then minimum also a long gun. They're two completely different things. I'm going to recommend a shotgun. I'm going to recommend some kind of shotgun with a reasonable rate of fire. One, because they are the most effective close-range weapon. And going back to food procurement, they are my number one favorite thing to put meat on the table, especially if I'm on foot and I don't know what that meat is going to be. And they're also great for defense. So my number one recommendation is a shotgun. I don't care if it's a semi-automatic, a pump. I don't even care if it's an old bolt action you got at a gun show for $85. With an assortment of number 4 buck, double up buck, slugs, and birdshot. Get yourself a Maverick 88, get yourself a Mossberg 500. You could put up a decent gun and ammo array for $300. And if you don't do that now and things get bad, you're certainly not going to do that for $300 later. That'd be very unlikely. So do it now. I said at a minimum, you can have more than this, but at a minimum, a handgun and a long gun. If you want an AR-15 and that's your one long gun, that's great. Especially if you live somewhere like Chicago or, the middle of Los Angeles or really anywhere in Southern California between Santa Clarita and the Mexican border. You have a whole different set of problems if things get bad. AR, AK, I don't care, but the amount of firepower that a long gun, a good reliable long gun brings to bear is far more than a handgun. But again, you probably can't have it with you all the time. And again, have it ready, have a way to access it. Know how to use it, train with it. Know how to get quick, accurate hits on target. And the skill I'm going to tell you for this one is free once you have the weapon. Dry fire. Practice dry firing. If it's a shotgun, make sure it's empty, put a target up, and practice pulling the trigger. If it's a pump action, working the action and firing it again. Practice from the low ready, practice from the high ready. Practice. It's free. And especially with a handgun, practice your skill. Practice dry firing. Practice your Mozambique drills. 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. At different distances, under different lighting conditions. Along those lines, but far more versatile, a knife. And I would say your minimum on this one is have a good EDC knife and a good full-size fixed blade knife. Just, if you've listened to this for any length of time, I think a man ought to carry a knife for a variety of reasons. That ought to be part of your everyday, day-to-day, everyday carry thing. A knife. A man ought to carry a knife. But again, a good EDC knife, my go-to if you know nothing about knives, is a Buck 110 Slim. It's a great knife. It's not overly expensive. It's American made. You can skin a deer with it. It's big enough to be a formidable defensive tool if you need it. It's got decent steel on it. They make even the budget one and a very high-end one. But even just the base model ones have good steel. They're easy to sharpen. They're cut great. They're a good knife. Again, the Buck 110 Slim, you can get any number of knives. But at a minimum, have your EDC knife and have a good fixed blade knife. If you don't know anything about that, just get a U.S. Marine Corps K-bar. I had them during the war, but anything, a good fixed blade knife with a 4-inch blade and up. For any number of tasks, you may want a bigger knife than your EDC knife for. Have that in your bag ready to go. Have it in your car ready to go. But a good EDC knife, and again, don't just have it in your pocket. Have it on you. Be ready with it. And your skill for this one is know how to sharpen a knife as a man. Know how to take a basic stone or a diamond stone or sharpening steel. Just pick one and know how to sharpen a knife. To the point where you can slice paper, to the point where you can make it sharp. That's just a manly skill that every man should know. So that's your skill for this thing. Know how to sharpen a knife. All right, man. You remember how at the beginning I said if you don't care about protecting those weaker than you, if you don't care about being able to protect women in your life or children or orphans or care about any of that, you don't care that Jesus said to watch and be ready, you don't care about any of that, here's the reason why you ought to do it anyway. It's a good investment. A Glock 19 might as well be a giant silver bar. If you buy it today and take care of it and then sell it, you're probably going to make money on it. You're probably not going to lose any money on it. Especially if you, let's say, buy a used trade-in Glock in good condition and then go to sell it a couple of years later. You'll almost certainly get more than you paid for it. And even if you keep that money in the bank, it's probably going to be worth less in the future because of inflation. Inflation's a real thing. So even if you don't think you ever want to protect yourself, if you think when something bad happens, you're just going to call the police and you don't ever want to be able to protect yourself. If somebody breaks into your house and you're just going to crawl into the corner and suck your thumb while somebody has their way with your wife or your children, if that's the kind of man you want to be, even if that's you, just buying a Glock 17 or a Glock 19 and putting it away and selling it in a couple of years, there's really no downside. And if things get really bad, that thing's going to be really valuable. Let's go back to something as mundane as food. We all know inflation is a thing. We all know that food prices have gone up in the past 2 years. If you buy that, like we talked about, if you buy food you're going to eat and you're going to eat it anyway, if you buy it today, it's going to be cheaper than if you buy it in the future. So you're kind of just giving yourself a raise in your income if you buy a little bit more now. As long as you're doing, buying what you eat and buying two and then eating the older stuff first so it doesn't expire. What's the downside there? How is that going to hurt you? Anything if you do it wisely, like buying a U.S. Marine Corps K-bar made by K-bar. It's a very cheap investment. I don't know what they cost, but far less than $100. You buy one of those, you keep it in the box. You put it somewhere in your car. In a couple of years, you can likely sell it for as much or more than you paid for. The price of steel has gone up quite a bit recently. So again, what's the downside? Maybe you really need it and you have it. Maybe in a couple of years you decide, you know what? I'm just going to go back relying on somebody else to provide all my needs. If something bad happens, FEMA's going to take care of me. If I call the cops, they're going to be there in 15 to 30 minutes. That's good enough for me. There's really no downside to have done all the stuff that we talked about today. Again, I really hope I'm preaching to the choir. But as Jesus says, no prophet has honor in his own country. Maybe you know somebody that you've been hinting at this and they just won't listen. I get it. Jesus' own brother didn't listen to him. He had to raise from the dead. Maybe share this episode with somebody else, somebody that you want to be able to take care of themselves and their family if things get bad. If you're already on board, if you're already like, yeah, I get it. Maybe share it with somebody that doesn't. They may be more likely to listen. Not because I'm any better than you, just because sometimes it's easier to listen to somebody else. Just like I am a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. You heard my background. I don't teach my wife how to shoot. If something she's really struggling, I'll give her a pointer here and there. But I don't go out and give my wife courses in shooting. It's a good tactical tip for you men out there too. Pay somebody else to teach somebody that's close to you. There's just some dynamic about it in most cases. If you like this message, if you want more, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't want this to be over, I like this, I want more of this, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. Again, goodshepherdtraining.com. That's your one-stop shop, Alpha Male Podcast, Gunfighter Life if you like the tactical stuff. If you care about the important stuff, Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. But there's all kinds of stuff there. If you're a more visual person, there's pictures there. If you join Patreon, if you want to support the community, the tribe in that way, you get some extra content there. Some good practical shooting drills are on there. All kinds of things, trapping kits. There's some cool merch on there if you want to fly the banner. Anyway, your one-stop shop is goodshepherdtraining.com. Tactical tip of the day for you guys that have all the basics covered. This kind of is the next level of what we talked about, store what you eat. And what alpha male doesn't like peanut butter? Maybe you can be an alpha male and not like peanut butter, but yeah, I'm not sure on that one. But peanut butter. You can go somewhere that sells in bulk or a restaurant supply store. I have a picture of me somewhere finishing off a 28-pound tub of peanut butter. But peanut butter, most people eat it. You can store it. And peanut butter has a massive amount of calories. A massive amount of calories for the size and weight. It's got protein. It's got fat. The things a strong alpha male needs. Again, store what you eat. And if you have to grab and go and leave real quick, a giant tub of peanut butter doesn't weigh a lot. Even a 28-pound tub can fit in a backpack, and that's a lot of calories. That and a bottle of vitamins, that'll last you a long time. You certainly wouldn't starve to death for a while. If you don't want a giant, tub, you can get the little small jars when they're on sale. The amount of calories you get for the money or the size of that container is really unrivaled in just normal everyday, day-to-day food. So, pretty awesome when peanut butter can be a tactical tip. Today's verse, Revelation 6. I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures, saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages. Do not damage the oil and the wine. With that, men, get out there, be strong, prove yourself a man, and have a blessed day. And remember this, men, no matter how well prepared you are, unless Jesus returns in our lifetime, we're all going to die. We're all going to die, and all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Many of these preps we talked about today may prolong your life, but there's only one that gives eternal life. Are you right with God? Is Jesus Christ your advocate, your sacrifice? Think about that.